Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Thursday's Market Mystics episode.
Hey, everybody.
We have a fun topic for today. Before we started recording, we were just browsing articles, talking about what we want to discuss for the day. And there's lots of news circling around about different types of regulations. Some people pro, some people against. And Kim made the comment, it seems like it's a race to regulation. And I was like, boom, that's our episode. Let's go record it. So today we will be talking about, it's not going to be all inclusive by any means, but just some of the top headlines and kind of get an idea of what's going on in crypto regulation around the globe.
Heck yeah. I think so. The reason I said race to regulation is it seems like right now, all of a sudden, maybe because it's tax season and we're just hearing more about it. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like all these different countries all over are having this race to get crypto regulated. So this whole thing that is supposed to be decentralized, and not run by governments. Governments are going like, no, but let me have a part of this. Mm-hmm. Right. So they're trying to really get to a place where they can have a solid stance on something. And until now, it hasn't been so solid. Pretty much China's been solid just in that they say nope.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and ever say that I'm a fan of government regulation in any regard, but especially over crypto, which is supposed to be a decentralized type thing. But there is some benefits or security that you get when a government takes the stance of regulating and not banning.
That's true.
Yes. So, for starters, we're sort of seeing this exact same thing happen in Russia. So they had come out at the end of January and said, I think we're just going to ban cryptocurrency in general. And then just a couple of weeks later, I mean, not very long, 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, all of a sudden they have more or less given crypto their stamp of approval. They've invited miners to come. They've made public statements about we want crypto here. And instead of banning it, they're now proposing regulations just to help them track it and kind of keep an eye on it. So although, yes, I would prefer that just didn't happen, it is significantly better for the market to have the government embrace it in their own way rather than to just shove it to the side and say no one's allowed to use it.
Right. This is a bold move with Russia. I think we talked a little bit about this in another episode. I don't remember which one. We've talked about a lot of things. But I think what we've talked about is that all of this stuff has been going on in El Salvador, which is great. I'm a huge proponent for it. I love it. I love to see it, except they're not a country that is really considered a world power.
Right.
And we've said before, until we see some of these bigger countries that are in the position of being one of those world powers start to embrace cryptocurrency, we may not see it become so widespread or have such a massive adoption. But this is a big thing with Russia because it does hold that position in the world. And number one, you can see from the 3 weeks ago or whatever, when they said they were going to ban it, you could see how the markets responded. And they dipped hard. I don't know that any kind of recovery is because of that, but it certainly made a difference. And we've talked about before too, Russia is one of the top Bitcoin mining countries in the world, as was China before they banned it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's very bold. This is telling that Russia is coming out and having this stance. And I am sure that I heard this somewhere. Don't quote me, don't make this fact, but I'm sure that I heard somewhere that it was their legislating body, whatever it is in Russia. I don't know if it's the parliament or whatever. I just don't know their government that well. They were saying they wanted to ban it. And I believe it was Putin who said, no, hold up, we're not going to ban it. We need to relook at this.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that can be said, at least in our country. There's a lot that is said against Russia and against Putin, but I think this was a great move on his part, because I really do think that they could at this point start leading the pack.
I agree. There's a lot of potential with this move. So it'll be interesting. Like we've said, none of those, the ban or this proposed regulation, none of it's finalized yet.
Right.
And so if things are changing on a weekly basis, it could flip back the other way.
That's so true. We may be telling you something different next week
Right.
about it.
But that's kind of the whole point with the race to regulation is you have people that are pushing for regulation that are pro crypto, and you have people that are racing for regulation that are anti crypto. And it's interesting to watch to see who's going to come out and get their laws and their different pieces passed, because that will greatly impact how the world views crypto.
Absolutely. So not too far from Russia, this is some more great news that's out there right now. Portugal, they have 0% tax on cryptocurrency, which is a bit unheard of.
Yeah.
So they've decided to not only embrace it, but encourage people to trade and deal in cryptocurrency by not taxing it. And so essentially, they're kind of setting up this crypto haven for the rest of the world, because they're encouraging businesses to come in who are trading in cryptocurrency and who are doing dealings with that to be able to not be taxed. And I would believe, because honestly, the trading has blown up. It is a multi-million, multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry at this point. And so for their economy, this could be huge for Portugal.
Yeah. I know it's not exactly Spain, but I remember, during the pandemic and maybe a little bit before, how there were talks of a lot of the smaller countries in that region that were really struggling financially.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know for sure if Portugal was involved in that, but this to me seems like they're putting their stamp of approval on crypto. And, it seems, I don't know what their laws are normally, but they might be regulating this softer and more friendly than they do fiat currency.
I would assume so, because they're saying Bitcoin earnings are exempt from their VAT, which honestly, I don't know what VAT is. It's their main tax in their country. I believe it's their federal
value added tax.
There you go. Which is pretty great.
Yeah, it's similar to our sales tax.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the other hand, so we have Portugal, 0%. And then let's just move over a little bit to the east, and we have India. I was reading an article in Fortune magazine, although this is all over the news. India is taxing Bitcoin like horse racing instead of like a capital gain. And they have proposed a 30% tax on cryptocurrency.
Interesting.
That is quite a large amount. And it's one of these things, they're saying, let's look on the bright side, at least it's not banned. But then on the other hand, how how incentivized is it to try to trade in this way? It's almost like you can do it, but we're really discouraging it.
Yes. Well, it's a bit like the taxes that some places do on like I think they call it like a vice tax. So like
Mhm.
liquor, alcohol,
Cigarettes.
cigarettes. And this would be looks like they're taxing it like gambling.
Yeah.
And that's harsh. I mean, just in America, the highest capital gains tax that you can pay is 20%, which is still high, but it's a whole 10% less than what India's proposing, and that's only if you make more than 445,000 a year.
Wow.
Like, I mean, so there's a lot of people that are going to fall into the 15%. And if you make less than 40,000 a year, you don't have any capital gains tax.
Wow.
So, currently the USA is interestingly leading in some tax areas. It's not
At least
usually my
compared to
first thought.
India.
Yes, as
Maybe
compared
not
to
so much
India.
compared to Portugal.
Right. Right. Hmm. Interesting. But then you have places like this is it's so interesting to see this. It's just over here it's pro, over here it's negative, over here it's pro. And so, you have
Mm.
India, you have Portugal being super friendly with taxes, you have India being super harsh with taxes, and then you have Brazil looking to or allowing people to pay their taxes in crypto or in Bitcoin. And
Mhm.
that's not necessarily like a full blown embracing of crypto, but that is a big step towards recognizing it. I mean, that is truly them. And I know it was just a city, it was just Rio that did that, but that's that is that government entity recognizing Bitcoin as legal tender. That's a pretty big deal.
It is a very big deal. Again, I think some of these places that we're talking about, these are places you need to keep kind of file this away because these are going to be the ones that you see being trailblazers in this. I
Mhm.
really believe we're still in this time, especially. I mean, the episode is called Race to Regulation. It's because no one is really horribly solid on this yet.
Right.
But you see directional moves. And I mean, people could go backwards, but the people going forwards, they're blazing new trails. This is, I mean, even governments are calling all of the cryptocurrency world the Wild West
Mhm.
because it is pretty unregulated. People kind of don't know what to do with it. There are those who are rushing in, those are who are saying, no, we're fine where we are. And it just is, it's an interesting time
Yeah.
to be connected with this, but even to just sit back and watch it happen.
Well, it's important to watch it and to understand what's going on because it's not that regulation can't be changed, but whatever happens first is going to be more solid. Like it takes more to change regulation
It's
than it
true.
does to implement it in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
keeping an eye on what is leading the pack, to be the first passed, that's important things to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. It's setting a precedent. That's kind
Hmm.
of what it's doing. And again, going back to Russia, and then we'll talk about the US in just a minute. You also need to really watch what these bigger countries are doing. So we know China, solid, just nothing, right? They're like,
Mm.
no, thank you, pass, hard pass. Our Bitcoins are not made in China or will not be in the future anyway. Russia is saying, okay, let's go with this. We're going to
Mhm.
do it. We're going to continue the mining. We're going to continue allowing this in the country, being fairly friendly toward it.
Mhm.
Now, the US, I am, I'm just getting such mixed messages in the US. I live here and I don't know what to think. Uh, I was really encouraged this week. I sent this to Josh, but there's a bipartisan bill out there that's being proposed that would eliminate any tax obligations for capital gains that are under $200. It doesn't sound like a big deal, except this has the potential to make it easier to use Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies in everyday transactions. So
Yeah.
using it as an actual currency, maybe not to buy a house, but to go to the grocery store and use your crypto.com card or your Coinbase card or your Uphold card or whatever Visa,
Mhm.
MasterCard that you're holding that is linked to your crypto accounts, you could really start using that as normal currency without having to incur more taxes.
Right. And that's a big deal. So, like a good example, and we kind of talked about it, would be if you had purchased $100 in Bitcoin and you go to the grocery store, and after you purchase it, the Bitcoin goes up in value. So now you have $150 worth, and you spend, you know, 50, 100, 75, whatever it is. You're going to get not only sales tax, but you're going to get capital gains tax on that purchase because you've realized a gain.
Right.
And that's really what this bill is trying to prevent. It's saying, hey, let's let people use this and not punish them for having 10,000 microtransactions, over the course of a year. If you really, I don't use my crypto.com card for very many purchases, but if I did use it for every purchase, I mean, I would have hundreds of transactions per year that would be taxable events.
Yeah.
And so this bill is a really big deal the for the actual acceptance of crypto as a tender.
Yeah. I also think it's very notable. Something to also watch. This is a bipartisan bill. This is not
Yeah.
proposed by the left side. It's not proposed by the right side. It is both sides of the fence. I heard speculated before that the cryptocurrency issues in the US in the legislative branch it is less bipartisan issue than it is generational issue. So people who are boomers and older tend to not be for cryptocurrency and be pretty anti. People who are like Gen X and beyond tend to be far more crypto friendly. And I think that's an interesting shift, especially in this country where it's so divided.
Hmm.
And we've talked about this before as well. Cryptocurrency has the potential to reunite things that have been divided in the last few years. Like there's
Yeah.
been such a chasm politically in this country between parties. But if you have something where people can unite, even if there's an age, okay, if there's an age gap and it is dividing that way, I'm not for division, but it is kind of knitting together some of the void that we've
Yeah.
experienced recently.
That's true. Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's also some expected executive orders from Biden or from the White House where we're looking to kind of give some maybe national direction over crypto.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that we know much of what's going to be in that or even what they're proposing for it. But you know, Kim and I were kind of talking. It's interesting to see the White House really getting involved in crypto regulation because it's not typically their
It's not usually the
role.
executive branch's role
Yeah.
to participate in lawmaking.
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, executive orders have always been around, but it seems like now it's getting thrown around a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
what comes of that because there's also a lot of individual states that are looking for rights and regulations regarding crypto. And so I'm fascinated to see what will happen at the national level,
Hmm,
because it could affect what some of these states are trying to do at the state level.
absolutely. You can look around and you will see all different states, just as much as all the different countries have different stances. A bunch of different states in the US do as well. So we can
Yeah.
look at federally, what are they looking at? But let's look state level. In Tennessee, there's a bill introduced to allow the state and municipalities to invest in Bitcoin. So, not to deal in Bitcoin, but to invest in Bitcoin. So, the state can have
Mhm.
holdings in cryptocurrencies, which I find to be pretty interesting. Um, there's another bill introduced on the same day that's seeking to establish a working group to study to see how Tennessee could become the nation's top destination for Bitcoin businesses. I find that pretty interesting. Although these bills were proposed by the same state representative, um, but as much as we're seeing like El Salvador or Portugal becoming these Bitcoin destinations, essentially,
Mhm.
um, now we see states in the US also wanting to do the same. I also wonder, and I'll tell you, I don't know enough about what is the state, what's state regulated and what's federally regulated.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious to see if once the federal regulations come out, how much states are differing from one to
Right.
another. Because obviously there has to be some rights by the state to be different. I mean, it's this way with pretty much everything else. Um, so again, I'm no politician. I'm not a political science major. I don't know everything about everything, but I'll be curious to see how things fall, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. There's there's just so much going on, so much up in the air right now.
Mhm.
So you've got Tennessee saying, "Hey, let's become the cryptocurrency state," but you also have Arizona introducing a bill that would allow Bitcoin to be legal tender. So, debts and taxes and things like that, just like we're talking about in Rio, just like in El Salvador, it's not necessarily that the state is, trading in it, but that they are recognizing it as a legal tender. And that these moves are big deals. Like,
Yeah,
if these get passed and they start to become more common, that will radically promote the use of cryptocurrency.
absolutely. I am so excited to see how all this pans out. Just because I was also reading about, okay, it is no secret. I really love what's going on in El Salvador. I always talk about it. I probably will for a long time. Um, but we talked about the IMF has been coming down on them and telling them to take back what they said about Bitcoin,
Yeah.
not accept it as legal tender.
Even one of their credit rating companies giving them a reducing their standard.
Exactly. They're lowering the credit rating of El Salvador because they refuse to stop accepting Bitcoin or to reverse their stance on Bitcoin.
Right.
Um, so I see that, and I think if we see Tennessee and Arizona doing these things, what's going to happen then with the IMF and their stance on cryptocurrency as legal tender? If a place like the US, even if it's just one state, or maybe it's 5 states, because there are plenty of others that are have bills out there and have proposals for the same thing. What happens when the US starts accepting it? Is the IMF going to change their stance? with El Salvador. Are they going to have to come and issue an apology? You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen.
It's crazy. I will say, while I'm crushing on El Salvador, last week I shared, or was it this week? I don't know. I get days mixed up. I was sharing my top 3 influencers
Yeah. I goes
in
on Monday.
crypto. And I was talking about the president of El Salvador. And let me tell you what solidified his position on my list was Moody's, which is another credit rating agency. It was rumored that they were also lowering El Salvador's credit rating because of the IMF stance on Bitcoin as a national currency. And Bukele tweeted in response to this, El Salvador DGAF. And I loved it. Loved it. I just love that he's in it. He's doing it regardless of what anybody else says. He believes in it. His people are behind him. I just love it.
I recently heard someone talking about political smear campaigns and I found what they said interesting. So they were talking about being attacked for political stances.
Mm-hmm.
And they said almost always, if you just keep living life the way you've been living life, stay honorable, stay on the course that you've been on, that eventually people recognize the attacks were just attacks and they were baseless and they go away. I mean, it is not necessarily that you get some big public apology, but if you start to really engage and fight back, it can cause a lot more damage. And I think that that's what you see with El Salvador is, to a point, he's poking the bear, but he's also just saying, we're going to stay on this course. Right. We're not going to bounce back and forth. This is the plan we've picked and we're sticking with it.
Right.
That's a big deal to me.
It is. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the race to regulation, guys.
I'm sure it will change more as we work our way through the rest of 2022, but it'll certainly be interesting to see how this pans out.
I think we'll have something more solid by the end of the year.
Who knows?
So that 2022, the tax year, can be wrapped up nice with a bow.
I think there will be something more. I don't know that it'll be finalized.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see.
I don't know. I have to say one more thing just because I'm thinking it. I hope that the U.S. government will give the states the right to decide for their own people.
Yes.
That would be that's what I'm hoping for.
I think in general, we're seeing that happen in a lot of ways. We're seeing states sort of have a little bit more authority to say this is what we're going to do things. So maybe we will. That'll be nice. And if that's the case, I'll be interested to see how it shakes out so I can decide where I'm moving.
I'll help you move wherever you go.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.